Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up.
Hello, Ben.
Hello, Jeremy. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday indeed. What a week it's been.
What a week.
Data Jam week this week. So, looking forward to the weekend. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Been busy, haven't we?
We have been busy. We'll talk a little bit more about that later in the show. But welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up, where we look at everything to do with the London market. Technology change, innovation. This week, we're going to continue with the news around Lloyd's, but we're going to talk about robots, we're going to talk about data. Feels like Christmas. Anyway, let's
not if you read the budget.
Yeah, that's it. Well, in the sense it's Scrooge. Let's go there in a minute, but let's start off where we left off last week. So last week we were talking about John Neal and the Lloyd's investigation into allegations of an affair and the implications that has on both its procedures in terms of vetting for senior appointees, but also just the general climate and kind of mess this type of coverage causes. And it kind of didn't go away as predicted last Friday, because in the Sunday Times, it was front page of the business section. It went into quite a lot of detail. And I had a look this morning on the Times Online section, and there were 56 comments underneath the story that was published last Sunday, and many of those were one of expressing cynicism that the behavior is consistent with long-standing culture in parts of the Lloyd's market. Quite a lot of those comments, and I don't know, it was just really disappointing again to kind of be raking up this stuff that we seem to be talking about for years.
Yeah,
and nothing seems to have changed. What do you make of it?
I think you're right. I mean, I think that's really really well expressed, Jeremy. I'm just putting my cardi on.
You need to switch microphones, I think.
Do I? Is it right? I'll switch that in a minute, but I'll make my point.
Yes.
Cardigan. There you go. So yes, I think you have explained it very well. It seems to me that one, it's not going to go away. There is a whole report to come and everything else, and it has sparked a lot of the kind of past, in a sense, which is really poor because it takes you back, having moved forward. And I know people have said that lots has moved forward, and I think we both agree with that, working with clients and businesses in the market. I think that there has been and I'll talk about this a bit more in a minute, but there's been this isn't just about John Neal and whatever happened there. I think there is a question mark now over what has been happening at Lloyd's overall in general around the whole communications of what has happened to this culture program. And that has to be, transparent and clear going forward. There has to be a real commitment because remember, John Neal led this out. And you cannot avoid the sense of, hypocrisy that potentially is here over this. And, that things were said, and now you look back at them and think, well, did he believe any of those things at all? And that gives you a real sort of sense of unease when that's the case, and that can be, it can be argued that, okay, this is not all leaders and most of them are fine, one bad apple and things like that. But the trouble is, when you do look, and we'll do it in a minute, at some of the things that have been communicated, and this is partly a communications issue, both in terms of the allegations and more generally, there has been some odd things, and we've talked about these in the past. We've talked about them in relation to Blueprint 2. We've talked about them in relation to the culture survey. Now, not because you and I don't think are on the culture bandwagon, and that's not what our businesses or are where we are, but we're about performance and improvement and all those things, and we know actually how much impact that has. So as you say, it's messy and it's damaging, and it's you kind of need to have a real clarity of leadership around Lloyd's, I think.
Yeah, I think I agree with all that, and yeah, it was quite interesting reading the comments underneath the article, because it gives you a sense of people who are not in the industry, working in the London market, what they think about it. And yeah, it's a bit disappointing that those kind of the whole situation seems to not be that surprising to outsiders, in inverted commas, which is the damaging elements of it.
And I would say, I think that when you do you can always do a lot of tick box things and ask questions and all that. I know that all too well, but you've got to do your evidence, your data, the things you're using to measure progress have got to be, you've got to believe that they are getting to the heart of what people believe and feel. And I'm not sure that is the case. I think when you go to those sort of comments underneath, they're thoughtful and people have spent time writing them, and they could actually be from people in the market as well as outside. But you're right, they feel authentic, don't they? And they represent a wider view.
They do, and like quite a few of them make jokes about the job title corporate affairs director, and this you can write it down. So yeah, they are authentic, and as always, there's a gallows humor in it all. But should we talk a bit about the culture survey? Should we put the 2019 stuff first and move on to the 24? Okay, so yeah, just give us a flavor of this, Ben.
It's something here that I really want to point out, and I'm not trying to be clever after the event. We did talk about this before. So when this happened, of course, this was post Bloomberg, post some of the issues around, harassment issues in the market, serious things, which John Neal then said he would, fight against, and then that has, to some extent, that has happened. But I want to say, well, look at this evidence. So there are some oddities. That's all I'm saying. So the oddities are, one, when Lloyd started, they came out with this infographic, which is future culture. And I actually think it's pretty good because it does sort of point at the right things. It's kind of picked out really explicitly what those issues are, and I'm just having a quick getting it on myself so I can read it. So gender balance, speaking up, well-being, leadership, and so on. Making the Lloyd's market welcome to all, ensuring everyone's heard, championing well-being, owning accountability. They're not bad things, actually. And there was, I believe, they brought in a company that does this sort of these sort of culture surveys so they could benchmark it against the future. And they talk about acting on the findings, long-term program, key themes. Okay, so when you wind it forward to the next one, I think it is, we get something quite different. Now, this is not the same thing as that was done in 2019. And I think this represents a different and less effective way of presenting the data and the evidence. It basically says here that pretty much everything that we're doing is good. So it says that we've hit all the targets in the market. Okay. So 87% of employees believe their organisation is committed to having 86% of people feel they can be themselves at work. Good response rate. 100% of firms collect gender diversity data, collect ethnicity data, yada, yada, yada. Lots of things. But if you dig a little beneath the surface of this, and then I'll come on to what Lloyd has said, Patrick Tiernan said when he came in. In fact, I'll say that now. So Patrick Tiernan has said, well, okay, this is all right, but actually the Lloyd's part of this survey is in the bottom quartile of all these results, not the top quartile. And I think that's against benchmarks. But again, we haven't had clarity on that. So I do think it's exceptionally poor to not be clear about where this data is coming from. And you say, oh, well, Ben, you run a research company. But I do run a research company, and I have to be exceptionally clear. And this is kind of important stuff. And it's not exceptionally clear. So there's a number in here which says 43% of the market workforce are women. Well, I have data that's gone back over years, looking at broking and underwriting, for example, and claims where it's a bit better. But there is, in none of those data do we see 43% being women. So I just want, maybe I'm just questioning that, but I'd love to see more data on that as to what that is. What roles are they in? Are they junior or senior? What sort of businesses are we talking about? Just Lloyd's business? You know, I don't think that is recognised, because if it just put it this way, right? If 43% are women in the market, what's the problem? Why are they trying to solve a gender balance problem? There isn't particularly a gender. There's a 7% imbalance, but that's pretty good. So I'm like, well, what problem are you trying to solve if there's 43% women? But then I would also say, well, my data, our data, Greychurch data, and other data I've seen does not support that number. So where's it come from? Then they go on into 13% of the market from an ethnically diverse background, including 9% of leaders. Again, I'm not entirely convinced of that. Again, I've seen much smaller numbers in our data, much smaller numbers of ethnic diversity, and I think ethnicity. So I'm not sure about that. So anyway, that's one thing. Now, the other thing that happens with this data, which I think is really bad, and I brought this up before, is that this is. So let's say it's, let's just accept on their numbers it's a balanced market, even though they say there's still a gender problem, and the LMA did an event the other week, right, to say there's still not enough women in the market. Well, not according to your figures, Lloyd's. So, but let's just accept that number of 43%. But half of this sample that they're talking about that says it's all fine is men, right? Now, where's the data that says what do women feel about this? What do ethnic minorities feel about it? That's what you should do with these surveys. You don't just run a brush across the whole thing and say, actually, it's not too bad, and take the average. All the data that we do when we show anything where demographics matters, we draw out the differences, because the overall doesn't really tell you much, particularly if it's, in our case, mostly men. Yeah. So again, I'm comparing what happened in 2019 to now. This data and the way it's presented to me is kind of airbrushed and so on. And now that's, that's the criticism. But then, of course, Patrick Tiernan has come out fairly openly saying Lloyd's has got an issue in that we're not at the top of all these things. But again, this is not on the Lloyd's website. This is what's on the Lloyd's website. So, communication is, when I talked about it in the wider sense, just seems to be all over the shop here. There's nobody doing a proper job on this culture survey. There is a problem at the heart of Lloyd's because of the John Neal thing. There is questions, from everywhere. And then there's Tiernan saying, and we're pretty bad, before the John Neal thing, we were at the bottom of all these tables. So there's literally no clarity at all on any of this. And I'm not sure what anybody's going to make of it. And when they say, where's all the evidence? Because it's contradicting. And, one thing's contradicting another. There are things you want to know about. We don't know them. There's no methodology in this download of the report, I said, you know, all proper research has to have a methodology. How we did it, who did it, what was the question set, all those sorts of things. It's just basics, but it's not done. It's hidden. They used to show it, and now they don't.
Yeah.
So I feel there's as I say, there's been a bit of an airbrushing job over this, but it does look to me like there is no consistency over how this should be communicated, which again leads me to believe that there is disagreement inside Lloyd's as to how to show this data.
Interesting. Do you think that the kind of the situations and the events that we've seen recently and over or long term will start to have an impact on Lloyd's businesses, or do you think that because everyone's kind of still making money and it's all kind of working, you know, it's a bit like the stuff that I talk around technology and change and the operations thing. It's kind of all working and it's okay, but you're not seeing kind of the kind of longer term view. Do you think these events are going to change, or do you think actually things will?
What I think is that Lloyd's is I think the problem is that Lloyd's is out of step with the rest of the market. And that's the problem. I think the rest of the market, you know, many of the businesses that you and I work with, I think, you know, and that's why some of these results are quite good from this culture survey. They are organizations which I can walk into and feel, yes, it's fine. And I know lots and lots of people in those organizations. Very, very few of them are, yes, particularly some women have some complaints, of course, but it's much, much better than it used to be. There's a way to go, but those organizations are definitely progressing now, and that's a good thing. So you're right. I think the bulk of the market, I think fundamentally the market is, you know, the businesses, whether they're companies market or Lloyd's, doesn't really matter. The jargon doesn't really matter. They're insurers working in a global market competing, and they've realized actually we need to get the talent and the staff, and we need to just change anyway. And I think they've left Lloyd's in the dust. And Lloyd's has been playing some other game or doing something else to try and show what's going on. And I'm not sure, maybe people pay lip service or they get involved with it, but their problem now is that they're seem to be even further behind. The damaging thing is that the Lloyd's market is synonymous with the whole of the London market, you know, and specialty insurance, and that's why its brand is linked into that. I'm not sure that again, I haven't got the sort of data or the evidence at my fingertips. I'm only going on what I believe here is that there are changes, but equally, I will say this, is that there has been no gender balance change in our survey data over the past 8 or 10 years in the talent stuff that we do. And that's in underwriting and broking. So the gender balance is significantly skewed based on my data or our data at Grace Church. Clearly, Lloyd's has some other data that they collect, which is different, which I just simply cannot understand.
Yeah.
But if you said 43% of the workforce are women, going back to that point, again, if you broke it down and say, well, what's the percentage of underwriters that are women? What are the percent? I would love to see those data. They must have it, but they don't seem to want to publish that.
No. Right. Well, another week.
I mean, to your point, Jeremy, just to finish it off, so you could have just let all this go if the John Neal thing hadn't happened, and so it could be argued this is a good thing for the market. You know, it's drawn attention to things that needed to be drawn attention to. But you know, that's a very rose-tinted spectacled view of it all.
Yeah. difficult conversations to have. But anyway, we'll watch this one as we always do. Right, let's move on to other news. Let's talk about robots. I'm not on my Roadcaster, Ben, because I left it at the event, so it's now in Ludlow.
Oh,
So
right.
I would usually put on my robot voice and introduce robot news, but I can't do that. So I'll have to robot news. That's the best I can do. It's not very good.
I'm just going to go onto my microphone. So can you just tell me you can hear me? Sorry, there shouldn't be a test. Can you hear me?
Yes, that's much better.
Okay, there we go.
Excellent.
Seamless, mate.
Absolute seamless. Production values top notch today.
I don't sound
Anyway,
like I'm in a tin can now.
Yeah, you do sound a lot better. Let's talk about robots, humanoids, the future, Ben. As I've been telling you,
we always love. We like a robot story because we're old enough to remember Tomorrow's World, and they're always talking about robots. And as I've always said, people will talk about robots forever, but they never actually happen. And I'm still of that opinion. Spoiler alert. This is an interesting article in The Economist about humanoid robots, which obviously has come to the fore because Elon Musk has said that he will be producing over 1 million robots by 2030, selling them. Humanoid robots. The one that you can see here is I can't remember the name of him. It's Bernd Boric's robot, or Bent Boric's robot. He's a Swedish. Oh, he might be. Oh, hang on. He might be Norwegian.
Nordic knitwear.
Just he's in Nordic. The robot is dressed in Nordic knitwear.
Really?
And I don't. I presume Bernd Bornik is Norwegian.
Yes, I'm going to say that.
Let's go with Norwegian.
Yeah.
And so he's in Nordic knitwear, and so this robot is one that Mr. Bornick's firm hopes to have 10,000 of its robots by end of 2026. So they're selling these robots, but they're not that good. So they want it. They said, can it go and get you a can of Coke from the fridge? No, not really. It gets lost and distracted on the way to doing it. Which I would have thought was a fairly basic thing that a robot could do. The leader in the market. So the article goes and covers all sorts of things. So the market leader is China's Unitree, which is not surprising given that they're an innovative economy. Delivered around 1,500 robots 2024. Their most advanced model is $90,000. This burnt one is $24,000. Not as expensive as I thought, but if you can't get a can of Coke, that's a lot of money to spend on it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it can do a few chores, the burnt Bornick one, and then the China's Unitree model again is good, but they still describe it as a research unit, so not almost like a beta type thing. They're using the robots and they're training them in real environments, because if you train these so the difference is that humans learn with your whole body, your sense of touch, the kind of weird spatial awareness we have, how we can throw a stone or a pebble a certain distance, or a cricket ball or whatever. All of that stuff is rather weird, not fully understood really. It's how the brain interacts with the body. So
like riding a bike.
Yeah, exactly, a good one. All of the stuff that we do as humans, the amazing thing is that there is that sort of embodiment, that embodied intelligence, and that's what they're talking about, that these robots need. They need this embodied intelligence, otherwise they just kind of don't work out the environment, and then they're a bit useless. So there is a company that does that analyzes this market and says that they think that in the longer term, the market could be worth $2 trillion for these robots, so very large. But at the moment, there's safety concerns and regulation and things like that. And that, for example, if a robot did physical harm, that would cause a big problem. And, these are big, heavy robots that they're developing here because they would need to lift and things. So, but by the way, sorry, the point of robots is to, as Tesla has said, is to eliminate almost all physical labor. So if you imagine the benefit of one of these robots in your house might be 60,000 or whatever, but it will literally go and do the ironing, the washing up, all the boring stuff that, empty the bins, crush the cardboard for the recycling.
The important stuff.
That sort of stuff, all of that stuff could be done by these robots, and I don't know whether we would do nothing, but you could do other things, or you could whatever. So the point is that, and I think it seems a good selling point to me, is if you get one of these things and you spent your 60 grand or your 50 or your 40 and they'll come down in price, you go, wow, I couldn't live without that. I'm not sending it back. It's great. So there's a point at which all these developers can see where you have created something that actually works, but they're a little way off that. And they have this problem. They describe it as the blind gymnast problem, which is, that's what they're a bit like, these robots. They're kind of like a blind gymnast. They can do all sorts of things, but then they kind of crash into stuff.
Yeah.
So they're trained in virtual reality, incredible athleticism, can do all sorts of things, but no understanding of how the world works at the moment. So it's good, this article, because it does explain to me why, robots are not really moving forward as fast as they should in development terms.
I wonder whether it's quite interesting what you talk about, like putting them in the wild, put them in people's houses to try and for them to understand the world, as you say.
Yeah.
Because quite often, if you look at the kind of software development and stuff like LinkedIn and Facebook and stuff like that, they do just make updates, and then based on whether it works or not, they either go, we'll keep that or we won't keep that. And
sure.
I wonder whether that kind of learning process will accelerate now, because they're in that environment. They've taken them out of the lab and they put them in the real world.
Well, that's right, and that's what they are doing. But there are risks, of course, in doing that. Because you've kind of got to put them into this. I imagine if you buy one of these things, there are all sorts of things you sign off on, liabilities and everything else. And wonder what happens to your home and contents insurance if you got one of these things running around and it suddenly starts karate chopping your Ming vase. There'd be a bit of a problem with the insurer there, wouldn't it? Well, there's unfortunately C3PO didn't behave on Sunday morning. Opens up a whole new world. But there's all of that. Yeah. But the concept and the principle is quite interesting, really. If it can, particularly if you think of an aging population and all those sorts of things, you can replace and get these robots to do a lot of that manual stuff.
Yeah. Sounds good. Sounds interesting. We'll be keeping track of that over the next 50 years.
Yes, we will. Yeah, there might be 2 robots here.
Yeah, that'd be good.
You don't need to understand the physical world to do this show. You just sit in a seat.
Just sit in a seat. That's it. Should we talk about car insurance just a little bit? Maybe without naming any names, but it's a mystery world that we always try try and unwrap and untangle and understand why prices are set at certain points, and then why we can't understand it. But anyway,
I think it's please explain my car insurance quote time.
Yeah. So I think you had your renewal come through during the keynote presentation at Data Jam.
Yes, rather ironically, and I don't know if this is their wonderful new shiny system that was being described, but I got the quote from my renewal quote from Hastings Direct during the Hastings Direct presentation on Tuesday, so that was interesting. Anyway, unfortunately, that quote came through at 18% higher than last year's quote. So, long story short, I decided I don't want to pay that because I thought, said it on this show, no less, motor quotes are coming down. I've explained some of the reasons why, having researched it, and hey presto, I'm getting an 18% rise on my exceedingly safe Volvo where nothing has changed. Anyway, so I went back to, so they make you ring up to cancel your policy, which is annoying. That's a whole customer experience thing that just shouldn't happen because they obviously want to sell you, and so on. So anyway, I thought, well, I'll do that. So I cancelled the policy, and they asked me, who did you take the policy out with? And I said, well, this other company, I won't say who it is. And they said, okay, well, we'll ask you a few more questions, see if things have changed, and see if we can get the quote down. So let's say the quote's £1,500. I've already been quoted and purchased the same policy for the same car for £680. I think that's a 70-ish% reduction, right, on that. So that is a nonsense to start with, particularly as they've raised it. They've not even dropped it down. They said after this 5 minutes of more questions, deadly dull, they said, we can drop it to 1,100. So would you like to proceed? And I said, why would I like to proceed when I've got another policy that I've just purchased for £400 cheaper? Oh, I don't know, because we got the price down, sir. Well, you got the price down, but it's nowhere near the price I've got on the other one. So I don't know what your instructions say when you in your call center, but I suggest they should say it's highly unlikely someone would take that offer. And they said, well, have you got any things like breakdown and things like that? And I said, no, they'd already taken all that stuff out. So it was exactly like for like, really, except for a slight difference on the mileage I'd put in. So they said, oh, well, and they said, this is really interesting. They said, oh, well, we've looked at your quote that you did on Money Supermarket. So in other words, they got into the data that I'd entered into the system. And they said on there, you entered, X thousand miles and you reduced it on the other quote. And that was £200 difference. So first, I'm thinking, how are they allowed to go and get data that I've entered into a system? Isn't there some sort of GDPR thing there on a competitive quote? Maybe they get it because the quotes, they quote as well. It's direct. Hastings is direct, isn't it? It doesn't go on the aggregators. Anyway, regardless, lots of stuff. This is why this is called, can you help me understand my motor policy quote, please? So I still don't understand. And I said, well, you may have knocked £200 off for that, but actually the difference is still £600. So where's the other £400? And I can only assume that's because they dropped it £400 because I rang them up and I'd already had a competitive quote. I can only assume that because there's no other data or information. There's nothing that they could explain to me that said what that £400 difference was.
Yeah.
I mean, they're perfectly entitled, I think, to charge an extra £400. But I talked to you before the show about, I think this is data asymmetry, as they call it, which is they are using their knowledge that you don't have to give you higher prices, but not explain why those prices are higher. So it's a lack of transparency for me.
Very interesting. Yes, the world of motor insurance. Nobody understands it, but everyone needs it. So
but then you end up shopping around when you don't need. I mean, if they just gave you this, if it was all similar pricing, why is one car £600 cheaper than another? I mean, I don't get that.
No.
That's not a slight difference, is it? It's huge.
Yeah, and they legislated against the you can't have a different quote for new
No.
customers and existing customers, so that's gone.
Well, I'll tell you what, whatever that did or didn't do, there's a whole other range of things now that are going on just within my quote that I go, well, I don't understand any of that, and that's not transparent, and you've added all this money on, and you've charged me a higher premium and an auto renewal. Luckily, I saw it and I did something about it. But equally, crikey, it's a bit murky, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think we should say that it isn't just that insurer. I think you can probably translate the experience across most of them. So
yeah, I mean, it's like it's just inconsistent and it's just crazy. I don't know. I mean, I think you're back to data, aren't you? Really, which is that the data must be an issue here.
Yeah,
I think if they knew me, knew the circumstances, knew, if someone had manually underwritten it, I think it would be at 600 quid.
Yeah, probably. So let's close off our talk about data. We've spent quite a bit of time talking about different aspects of it. So this week on Tuesday we had the data jam, and it was a good event. Well, I'm going to ask you what you thought about it, Ben, but you had a session there. I ran a few sessions. I thought they were good. Thought we had some different formats, which was quite interesting. What did you make of the day?
Yes, it was good. I think the good thing about it is it was about data.
Yes, yeah.
Which is testament to you and your organisation of it, which is great. I mean, it was actually about data, and I was reflecting afterwards that there was some really good sessions, and they did come back to the core issue of data, and I think it is a big issue. It's fine to have all these fancy, shiny technology, but if the data's crap, that's that. So I certainly just to talk about certainly the session I was involved with, which is called the Future of Underwriting. It was quite interesting because I think there was a sense of certainly from the two younger people on the panel talking about algo trading and where that's all going. I think they really felt that was going to be very, very different by 2030. The two older people on the panel were a bit less sure because they'd probably experienced the promises of the past. But no, I think there's a feeling of throughout the conference of possibilities and opportunity that could be achieved, which is great, really. Yeah. I mean, a point was made about my session, which I think was good by somebody who said it'd be great to do more in the future of bringing together the front line people as well as the data people and the ops people. And I know that's always a challenge, but I think it's an interesting one to talk about, isn't it?
It is. I think the difference for me between this year's event and last year's event was that kind of some of the hype and kind of froth had gone out of the conversations, and it was more grounded in real world examples and experiences of what's worked and what isn't working. And I think it was quite interesting. We had some challenger keynotes that were really kind of switching the telescope round, if you like, and just just really challenging people to think about the ways that they're working, the tools they're using, the data, and asking some pretty big questions around.
I'd forgotten about that because some people were quite dismayed by that I spoke to. Were like, oh, I think that went a bit far. It was like criticizing, the little baby of AI or whatever. And you felt very much like they were a bunch of, I used to work with advertising creatives, and if you ever put their idea into a focus group and the consumers go, well, this is a bit crap, rubbish, I don't think I like this, they were like, what do they know about what we've, and I got a bit of that vibe, like, oh my God, you can't criticize this stuff. But I think that's a great thing to do. Yeah, challenge it.
Yeah, so that was good. So yeah, I enjoyed the day. Well, I enjoyed it. Well, it was hard work, but in reflection, it was a good day, I think. And I've had some nice comments. So if you did attend, thanks for taking part, coming along and supporting. And yeah, we'll let you know about the next ones. Good. Okay. Let's wrap things up. Ben, what are you doing this weekend? Anything good?
I'm just going away to the in-laws, actually, which is not very exciting, is it? But I will be doing, like every week, some more log chopping. That is
good.
That is coming on. That's my main form of exercise in life at the moment.
Yeah.
And no, yeah, not much else, to be honest.
Yeah, me neither. It was my birthday yesterday, and I think it was your wife's birthday. Was it?
Happy birthday! Gosh.
Thank you.
It was, yes, the same day, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
so
she's one day before you.
Yes.
Before you, yes.
Yeah, Wednesday. Mine's Thursday. So I think it's going to be. Well, I've had 2 pretty hectic weekends, and this week's been hectic. So I don't think we've got a lot on. There was potentially going to be a tennis match that I was due to lose, but luckily it's going to rain, so it's probably going to get cancelled.
Yes, it is. Yes, no, that's fine. And we'll have to celebrate your birthday in a couple of weeks when we go out and do our podcast Friday.
Yeah. So we're going to be recording some podcasts with a series of guests ahead of Christmas, so that in the new year we'll be able to ask them about their thoughts around 26 into 27, what they're working on at the moment, and their hopes and aspirations for the new year as we go into that. So yeah, we're going to be recording that in a couple of weeks' time. So we'll keep you posted about who's going to be the guests on there, and when we're going to release those special interviews. So that's something to look forward to as well. Okay, good. Right. Thanks, Ben. As always, we will see you next week, and have a good weekend.
Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.